Hello, my friends. Did you know that you actually have more power over your cognition, which is your brain power, than you thought? Actually, we have 99% power over what happens to our brains as it gets older. Want to know how? Our brain is actually linked to our gut health, which is kind of surprising to a lot of people, but our gut health, which includes what we eat, actually has the biggest impact on how we see things, how clear we are, how our ability to focus. And this is all due to our recent discovery or studies of this thing called the microbiome. Study of the microbiome has actually kind of challenged our current way of understanding our bodies and our health. And this is a huge deal because when we think, and what we're learning now is that our cognitive decline, such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autism, many different brain issues or many different brain conditions are being impacted by the microbiome, which is our gut health. Now, one thing to really note is that what happens if we don't actually start to explore this new knowledge? What happens if we maintain the same in our society or ourselves? Well, we will see more rises of chronic illnesses, and those include cognitive decline illnesses. We want to empower people to understand that they have the power to decide. Likely 99%, they say only 1% of people are actually pre-genetically 100% genetically predisposed to Alzheimer's. So imagine the cases of dementia, imagine the cases of, any brain fog or, early onsets of Alzheimer's that could actually be reduced by our knowledge of the microbiome and putting into place some of these very simple practices. And I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Natalie Pelto. I'm the co-founder of Blue Life RX. I am obsessed, to say the least, with all things gut health related, nutrition related, and health related. And I hold multiple different nutritional certifications and specialties. I just like to call myself a nutrition expert. And I also love all things lifestyle medicine. Now, saying that, I love and have a very, very personal connection to the microbiome and cognitive health and nutrition and cognitive health, because my son at 2 years old did and was going through a severe nonverbal autism diagnosis. And so this is kind of really near and dear to my heart because at the time, nobody was doing anything with the microbiome. This wasn't even really talked about in Western healthcare, and having a medical background of frontline in diagnostics, I could tell you that what the physicians could offer me for my son was extremely limited. And so I began some research, and what I fell into was a neurosurgeon's account of her own autistic son having huge changes and gains from addressing the microbiome, the link between the gut and the brain via the vagus nerve. This type of education blew my mind. It literally propelled a complete overhaul of my lifestyle at the time. I was not born into this very healthy lifestyle, but I definitely immersed in it when I realized its impact and how it could change our lives. And it gave us nothing short of a miracle. My son, who went from severe nonverbal, is now no longer even holding a diagnosis. So imagine this knowledge that we have, or this experience that we have, that we feel like we need to share with others. So in my case, it was with a child, but this could be the case for many people who are maybe my age, who are working with parents who are starting to decline with possibilities of dementia. There is so much education in understanding gut health and its impact on the cognition of these illnesses, and lots of different things are happening in a positive way when you start to address lifestyle medicine and the microbiome and nutrition. So how do we do that? What kind of advice can I give you today? The number one thing that I want you guys to retain from this video is that food is the number one impact, or the number one thing that you can do to impact the microbiome in a massive way. The reason is that our microbiome actually eats a lot of fibers that we cannot digest, but they can. So we are covered, right? And if you have never heard of the microbiome, this is a really great introduction for you. Our bodies are actually covered internally and externally by fungi, viruses, and a multitude, and they call this the microbiota. And so that's just a fancy word to say that we're covered in bugs. Let's not overcomplicate what it really means. But they're obviously bugs that we can't even see. But these good bugs are actually very helpful to our survival. So picture yourself this beautiful planet housing all of this ecosystem. Think of it as like you're the planet, and all of this microbiota are the different animals on the planet. They're the different trees and plants. And here's a good example of how important it is to have diversity in our microbiota, is that when they added the wolf back into the national park, right? There was a huge thing that happened there. And they talked about how the wolves recalibrated the ecosystem because the caribou were overeating. And so they were losing all this lush forestry. And so they created a balance. So we want as much diversity on ourselves in the same way. And yes, there's always going to be some bad bugs, but it's important for our good bugs to be really, really supporting and overtaking the bad ones. They always will be there, but we want to have a balance of stronger good bugs and bad bugs. When we start to have an overabundance of bad bugs, such as, a good one is Candida. There's many others though, but bacteriums that are, negative, that actually harm us, viruses that harm us. Then we start to see illness and we start to get symptoms, and then it manifests, or I shouldn't say manifests, but it turns into illness. So what do these things eat? What does our ecosystem eat? Well, the nutrition that we give it. So that is the importance of having a diverse microbiome. So if we have a diverse microbiome, that probably means that they eat diverse things, right? And so picky eaters are usually very depleted in their microbiome because they're not addressing the needs. And what happens when you don't feed something what it needs or what it can eat? It dies. And so what happens here is that there is a depletion in the gut wall, and there ends up being some spaces. I'm going to call them spaces. That's probably not the proper medical term, but I don't like to use the term leaky gut because physicians don't generally like it so much. But there is something that happens between the cells that creates the ability of toxicity that is meant to be, excreted, to go back up and to go up the vagus nerve and hit our cognitive, which is our brain, and create inflammation, and different conditions can come from there. So I hope that makes it pretty simple to understand that the number one thing I want you to remember is actually making sure that you are eating as diverse as you can. So what does that look like? It looks like eating the rainbow. Sometimes we don't need to overcomplicate it. I mean, it's so lovely to work with someone like myself who can tell you exactly what you're missing in your diet, and we can, work with all of the things that are really efficient. But if that is not the case for you, what can you do proactively at home? You can eat the rainbow of fruits and vegetables and fibrous things that are going to really whole grains, pulses, things that are going to feed the microbiome in its best way possible. So that was tip number one, to eat a diverse diet of fruits, vegetables that are different colors. The second tip that I'm going to give you guys is to make sure that you're eating as much fiber as possible. Now, if you're incorporating a lot of these fruits and veggies, then you are going to be eating as much fiber as possible. But at the beginning, I do understand that that's really difficult. But that is what we want to be addressing, is that the average adult female should be having a minimum of 25 grams of fiber per day. And how much is the average having today? Roughly around 12.5 grams. That means half. That means half of their microbiome is not getting what it needs. And then for men, it's actually 35. So it's quite a bit more. And again, still cut that in half to what most men are actually getting. Now, the number 3 tip is actually to consider introducing a diversity of postbiotic foods. Now, what are postbiotic foods? Postbiotic foods are foods that have been fermented, whether that be kefir or sorry, that's a dairy. I don't generally recommend the dairy stuff, but kombucha, or we're looking at sauerkrauts, kimchi. One thing to note, that sometimes those things are actually high in sodium. So we want to have, again, a diversity. So the thing about postbiotics, they are foods that actually have already fermented, and what's left is actually something that's very, very easy for our gut microbiome to digest, and they love it. So we want to actually introduce that. But some of them are fermented in salt, and that's the food and what creates the postbiotic, and some are fermented in sugars. Now, for the most part, commercially purchased postbiotics and are actually usually very high in sodium or very high in sugar. Whereas when you make them at home, they're really simple to make, and they actually hold less of these substances. So you actually get more of that sour taste, and that actually is usually means that it's eaten away all of the sugar, all of the salt. And so at that point, we are able to control not causing other issues. So that's just one thing to keep in mind. So I hope that you guys love these 3 tips. I hope that you guys are interested in learning more about this topic. And if you are, and you have a child who needs to have more education in, gut health and brain health, we know that currently in our day-to-day that in our society today, that the amount of learning disabilities, of autism, everything is on the rise. So if you want to know how to have more impact in your child's life, if you have an adult that is dealing with Alzheimer's, dementias, Parkinson's, if you want to have more impact in their life, and you are like that middle ground person like me, the caregivers, you want to make sure to join the Blue Life RX membership. It is such a low-cost membership. It's $27 a month for the membership with the education, and then for coaching calls, which is valued at over $2,000 a month. You can get in on that for $47 a month. So make sure to go and check it out. It'll be in the links below, and let us know, subscribe and like this video, and share with people whom you know might be needing this type of education. I can't wait to see you guys there.